Heyo, what's going on everybody? Today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite episodes of Phineas and Ferb. It's an iconic show with incredible writing, hilarious jokes, and genuinely fun songs. So the best episodes of one of the best shows of all time have truly got to be the best of the best. Are you ready? Let's get started with number 10. Dude, We're Getting the Band Back Together is a classic episode, beloved by many. To salvage their parents' anniversary, Phineas and Ferb track down the scattered members of the band Love Handle, who broke up years ago, and get them back together for a comeback performance in their backyard. The episode features far more songs than usual, and the song they sing with Sherman in the library, Ain't Got Rhythm, is rated one of the top 10 in the show overall. Personally, though, my favorite is Fabulous, which they sing with Bobby Fabulous while their mom is right there. Candace switches it up in this episode by helping to hide the whole thing from her. The iconic music and bold switch-up of the formula make this a strong contender, and I place Dude, We're Getting the Band Back Together at number 10, edging out every other episode that I couldn't fit into the tier list. Next up, number 9. Phineas and Ferb's Quantum Boogaloo isn't the first episode in the series to deal with time travel. It's About Time, where they find and repair the time machine they use here, takes them on a journey to the dinosaur era, and is a good episode in its own right. But in this one, they take their time machine to the future, and we get a glimpse into what their lives are like 20 years later. Phineas and Ferb meet their nephews, Candace's children, and then future Candace steals the time machine and goes back in time to bust her brothers on the very first day of summer. However, returning to the future, she finds a dystopia run by Doofenshmirtz, who she unwittingly helps to power. So she returns and stops her past self from busting the boys. In the end, Isabella time travels to before they time traveled, giving Phineas and Ferb the tool they needed, and preventing anyone from going to the future in the first place. This episode goes into far more depth with the timelines and loops. It hits different coming later in the series, now that we know and care about the characters more. It's About Time aired in Season 1. I also really love time travel, so I'm glad they got to explore it a little more. I place Phineas and Ferb's Quantum Boogaloo at number 9. This one tapped into one of my favorite topics, but the next one is probably a little more general. Tip of the Day is an episode about an obscure invention, the aglet, the little tip at the end of your shoelace, a tragically unappreciated part of your shoe. Dan Povenmire, one of the creators of Phineas and Ferb, says that when writing this episode, some writers wanted to create an evil organization dedicated to keeping knowledge of aglets underground, which is patently ridiculous, but they said without those stakes, what's the point of raising aglet awareness? Why does it even matter? Fortunately, Dan didn't let them put that in. They wrote a good story about appreciating something underappreciated, and now a whole generation knows what aglets are. Thanks, Dan. Tip of the Day is one of the most classic episodes that anyone who's watched the show fondly remembers, and so I place it at number 8. But the higher ranked ones on my list shake up the formula a bit more. On to number 7. Happy Birthday, Isabella largely deals with Phineas and Ferb building a massive birthday party for Isabella, when all she really wants is to spend some time alone with Phineas. But things take a turn when the two worlds of the show collide, literally. Dr. Doofenshmirtz's bug bus crashes into Stacy's house, and she gets a full front row view of Perry the Platypus as Agent P, jeopardizing his secret identity. If Stacy told Candace, or pretty much anyone she knows, about Perry, he would be taken away and reassigned to a different family. His whole life is in her hands, but incredibly, he trusts her with his secret. She promises never to tell, and though a mind wipe was threatened, she gets through the episode with her memories intact. In every future episode, Stacy knows where Perry is. In a show where the status quo typically resets at every episode, this is a game changer. For that boldness, I put this episode at number 7. But number 6 shakes things up in a much different way. For number 6, I chose Norm Unleashed. When Dr. D is out of commission for jury duty, he leaves his robot, Norm, to take over the tri-state area for him. But Norm has far less regard for human life or kid-friendly episodes. Norm creates a barrage of superweapons integrated into his own body, and goes on a rampage through the streets with a totally awesome musical number. This pushes Agent P to his absolute limits, containing the damage and preventing the loss of life, proving that every time Doofenshmirtz traps him and goes on a monologue, Perry is totally capable of breaking out and beating him senseless right away, but instead he sits and listens to the plan. He only cuts Doof off when there's a genuine danger, but when it's not a real threat, Perry is a bro. For excellent character development and a really hardcore premise, not to mention one of my favorite songs in the show, I've placed Norm Unleashed at number 6. But number 5 has an even more interesting premise, especially for a kids' show. Let's Bounce is a fun episode where Phineas and Ferb accidentally turn off gravity for Candace while she tries to impress her boyfriend's family. But the part that captivates me about this episode is Doofenshmirtz's evil plan. He posits that society is built on lies, and to make it collapse, he builds the Tell the Truthinator. This is a wild premise for a kids' show. However, this episode isn't directly teaching children that lies are good. It's merely acknowledging that they are common, and even little lies are lies. A positive message even comes through when it's shown that the Tell the Truthinator's effects aren't nearly as disastrous as Doof thought they would be, and even end up resolving Candace's conflict with Susie. For a nuanced and clever and surprisingly direct moral lesson, I place this episode at number 5. But for moral lessons, you ain't seen nothing yet. Attack of the 50-Foot Sister is a brutal takedown of the beauty industry. Candace wants to be a model for the Flawless Girl brand, but isn't tall enough, so she steals a growth elixir from Phineas and Ferb. Accidentally growing to gigantic size, she comes to realize that the makeup and beauty industry is built on shame and making girls feel bad about themselves. She decides not to fall into that trap, and loves herself for who she is. This episode has an actual real-world message, and it's something that not a lot of kids hear before they're taken advantage of by the industry. It's an actual important lesson, and giving kids exposure to these ideas can help them be more resilient when they see those kinds of manipulations in real life. It can, at the very least, help them to feel more comfortable in their own skin. I didn't like this episode much when I was younger because I was allergic to anything vaguely feminine, but I'm better now, and I fully appreciate the message. In earlier versions of this script, I even had this episode at number 1, but now I'm placing Attack of the 50-Foot Sister at number 3. Coming into our top 3 episodes, we have Traffic Cam Caper. The first episode, to take place at night, it involves a chase between multiple factions to get the recordings of a traffic camera outside the Flynn Fletcher's house. What's unique about this episode, though, is that Phineas ends up in actual danger. He ends up hanging off a ledge, slipping on oil, almost to fall to an actual death. Candace has a chance to get the DVD, the proof she's always wanted of Phineas and Ferb's antics, but she can't just take it and leave her brother to die. She saves her brother, and the disc ends up in the hands of Agent P. This episode proves that Candace is a multidimensional character, more than just a manic-busting force, there to bring conflict to the show. She also cares about her family, and doesn't want them to get hurt. For this beautiful character moment, I rank Traffic Cam Caper at number 3. Much like this one, though, is the next entry on our list. Road to Danville is an episode that barely features our titular characters at all. That's right, this episode is all about Dr. Doofenshmirtz and Agent P. In an effort to get rid of Perry so he can be a part of the Love Muffin play, Dr. D hits Perry with the trip to the Desertinator, but ends up also getting zapped himself. They end up in the desert and must find their way home, together. On the long walk back, they have fights, but in the end, they go back for one another, work together, and eventually make it back in time for Doof to take his starring role in the play. Along the way, they become real friends, more than just regular nemeses. This is a turning point in an arc the length of the entire show, and is definitely a major factor in the final episode when Dr. Doofenshmirtz gives up the life of evil. This episode is a moment of realization when they acknowledge that they can actually work together. For powerful character development that changes the course of the plot, I rank Road to Danville at number 2. For our number 1 entry, though, we have a real tearjerker. Oh There You Are, Perry is a beautiful, heart-wrenching episode. Perry finds out that Doofenshmirtz has been downgraded to a minor threat level, and he is needed to fight a more dangerous villain. As a result, he needs to be reassigned to a different host family, without even getting to say goodbye. In the morning, when Phineas and Ferb wake up, they're heartbroken, but not as much as Candace, who thinks it was her fault that Perry got outside and ran away. They set out to find where Perry is gone and end up singing a heartfelt song from the top of a building, broadcasting it for the whole tri-state area to hear, hoping, just hoping, he'll come back. And in the end, he does. With the help of Dr. Doofenshmirtz, Agent P was able to defeat that higher threat level villain once and for all, and was allowed to return to his host family. This episode shows that they're more than just a host family to him. They're his family. We don't often see them together in this show because they're in separate places doing separate things. He's a working platypus after all. But they're a real family and they really do care about each other. For a wholesome family moment that made me cry, I place Oh There You Are, Perry at number 1, the best possible episode of Phineas and Ferb. This top 10 list was really hard to make. There were a lot of fantastic episodes, practically every one of them is gold, and I kept making it too long, closer to a top 20. On top of that, it was really hard to compare the episodes. Each one is special in its own way, a new variation on the simple formula. If you think some of my placements were unforgivably wrong, or if your favorite didn't get in, go ahead and leave a comment on the video. I'll probably change things around eventually, maybe even make a tier list of all the episodes. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.